Okay, let's see if we can understand geometry in 10 minutes. Now, can you really take a 10-minute class and understand all of geometry? No, that's impossible. Okay, and the geometry level I'm talking about here is pretty much like a high school level geometry course. But what I want to do in about 10 minutes is walk you through the chapters of my course, which is pretty typical for any high school level geometry course. And we're just going to quickly highlight each chapter so you kind of get a basic sense of what would be in each chapter and a basic understanding of these topics. So I think I can do that in about 10 minutes of after which, you hopefully will feel less intimidated about geometry if you are considering taking that topic. Now, I'm going to leave a link to my actual geometry course in the description of this video as well, but I'm going to talk about all of that in just one moment. But first, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher. I'm going to leave a link to my math help program in the description of this video, along with my geometry course. Okay, direct link to my geometry course. So if you are taking geometry, you can just go directly there to check out my course. It's very, very, very comprehensive and will definitely help you out. But if you are struggling in mathematics, whether it be geometry, algebra, or any other course, I can help you out. I've been teaching math for decades. And one of the things I like to think of myself as doing when it comes to mathematics is really explaining it versus teaching it. I really break things down in super clear and understandable bite-sized pieces so anyone can get this stuff. So if you're at the middle school, high school, or college level, I can definitely help you out. Now, if you happen to be preparing for some test that has a math section on it, I'm talking about things like the GED, SAT, ACT, GRE, GMAT, ASVAB, AccuPlace, or CLEP exam, maybe a teacher certification exam, I can definitely help you out. And if you homeschool, you absolutely must check out my homeschool math courses. We were just voted #1 in the area of middle and high school math. We're pretty proud of that award. We're going to actually, this was from a big national publication. We're going to be giving more information on that very, very soon. Now, if you don't have any math notes, you need to start taking excellent math notes. That's the only way you're going to get great grades in math. But in the meantime, I'm going to leave links to my math notes so you can check those out. You'll find them in the description of this video as well. Okay, so let's get into high school level geometry, and we're going to take a look at the chapters of my course, which are effectively, this is pretty similar to what you would find in any other kind of geometry course, but we're going to walk through them one at a time, okay? And I'm going to try to do this in about 10 minutes. We'll see how I do here in a second. All right, so the first chapter of a geometry course is going to be something like this. These are my chapters, by the way. So this would be like the foundations to geometry. So what do you learn in that? Well, you learn things like, hey, what is a line? What is a point? You learn terms like collinear, coplanar, and you learn like basic notation like right here. Let me just draw something. So if we have this right here would be like a line segment, and then we have endpoints like here's A and there's B. So we could represent this line segment as the notation AB. Then we learn how to write angles. So if we have like A, B, C, this would be like angle BAC. Okay, the A here is in the center, so this goes BAC or CAB. So this would be angle BAC. So if in Foundations to Geometry, just learn some basic definitions about what points are, what a plane is, how to represent angles, and some other basic type stuff. So it's not too difficult, just a lot of kind of introductory level type of information. All right, let's move on to chapter 2. Now, one of the big things in high school geometry is doing proofs. And typically, students look like this when they do proofs. They just don't like proofs. They're just like, go, no, anything but proofs. That's so scary. Listen, if you have taken geometry or taking it, you can understand what I'm talking about. But a proof is you have to prove something. And this is a pretty big deal. Okay, so reasoning and proof, this has to do with things like logic, and it's real. In high school level geometry, you deal with things called postulates, okay, and theorems. You're going to learn the difference, but you're also going to learn about logic and specifically deductive logic, okay, and how to construct a geometric proof. All right, this is very, very important. And again, Most students are a little bit thrown off by this because they never really kind of studied logic before in any kind of formal sense. But this is very, very important stuff. So, in geometry, in a high school level geometry course, uh, some of the questions, not all the questions, obviously, but you're going to see proof questions, which are going to be like prove something, okay, this situation. You're going to have to construct a proof, and a lot of students find this very difficult. So, anyways, you're going to encounter this, but again, really you're going to be learning about logic, okay, which is very interesting, by the way, as well. So, I think a lot of you actually might enjoy that. All right, let's move on to chapter 3. By the way, we're looking at 11 chapters in my course. So, chapter 3 is going to be, in my course, it's perpendicular and parallel lines. Okay, so what are parallel lines? Well, parallel lines are lines that never cross one another. So, here is L and here is M. We can say L is parallel to M. And what are perpendicular lines? Well, we have line L here, and then we have another line right there, M, and these two lines are perpendicular. So there's a heavy emphasis on parallel lines and all the angles that are created when you have two parallel lines and something called a transversal that chops through them. Okay, so when you have a transversal, which is another line that chops through two parallel lines, all kinds of angles are created. You got these things called vertical angles, you got alternate interior angles, same side interior, corresponding angles. So you're really going to study this pretty heavy duty. And by the way, I must say that a lot of the problems that you're going to be doing with this subject, excuse me, parallel lines or perpendicular lines, is going to require you to know some algebra. Okay, so you're going to need to have your algebra skills ready to go. But this is a full chapter for any geometry course. So you're going to learn all the different special angles formed when you have a transversal that chops through two or more parallel lines. And then you're going to study more properties and theorems about parallel lines as well. Very, very important chapter indeed. Okay, let's take a look at chapter 4. Again, each geometry course, every geometry course out there is going to have, I'm trying to scoot this down. That's not working. Let me see if I can just move this down this way. That'll work. Okay, so congruent. Let's talk about congruent triangles. Let me give myself some room. All right, so what does this word right here mean? Well, you need to know this. Congruent is this little symbol right there. Okay, so you have equals, this is congruent, and then this little squiggly line is similar. We'll talk about that in a second. So we're talking about congruency, and we're talking specifically about triangles, but congruent triangles mean the exact same size and shape. Okay, so if I have a triangle right here, okay, and let's call this A, B, C, and I have the exact same size and shape. Let's call this D, E, F. So I can write this way, triangle A, C, B, and triangle D, E, F. I can say these two triangles are congruent if they have the same angles and same the sides are the same length, and the angles are the same. In other words, they're exact copies of one another. That's what you have to understand about congruency. It's basically an exact copy of a figure. Okay, now of course, in this particular chapter, you're going to be talking about congruent triangles, and you're going to be learning all kinds of postulates and theorems, things like SSS, side, side, side. So if you have two triangles and each of the sides are the same lengths, you have congruent triangles. Okay, so you're going to be learning some various theorems and postulates that in order for you to be able to prove, and this is where that idea of proof is going to come in, that you can prove that you have two triangles are congruent. Okay, so congruency is a big deal in geometry. All right, let's move down to our next chapter, and notice we are talking about no, I can't really scroll down here. It's not working for me too well, but I'm just going to move things down this way. Okay, so we're going to be talking about properties of triangles. Okay, so what are we talking about there? Well, you're going to be really looking at triangles in depth. You're going to talk about angle bisector theorem. So if I have an angle right here in a triangle and I bisect it, in other words, I cut this angle in half, what happens to this situation over here. Okay, and there's all kinds of theorems and properties. One of the unique things too you're going to be learning is about learning about in terms of triangles is the triangle inequality. Okay, triangle inequality, and I've done different videos on that as well. Let's take a look at a triangle inequality problem right now. Let me see if I can make something up. So 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this right here, 3, 4, 5 would be the lengths of a right triangle. So this is an actual lengths of a triangle. But one of the things about properties of triangles that you're going to study in depth in a geometry course is notice here is that the sum of any two sides is always greater than the third side of a triangle. So for example, 5 plus 3 is going to be greater than 4. 3 plus 4 is greater than 5. Excuse me. And let's see, what else are we missing here? 5 plus 4. 5 plus 4 is greater than 3. So any two sides, when you add up in a triangle, must be greater than that third last side remaining, just as I showed you right here. If it isn't, then the lengths given could not form a triangle. Okay, so this is going to be part of the stuff that you're going to be learning in the properties of triangles. Again, angle bisector theorems and triangle inequality, very, very important stuff. Again, heavy emphasis on triangles. Okay, we're talking about congruent triangles, and we're talking about properties of triangles. We're going to actually be studying triangles even further down the road here. In a second, I will show you, because we'll talk about right triangles. But let's move on to our next chapter, and hopefully I'm doing okay on time. I don't think I'm going to be doing this in 10 minutes, especially with the way my thing is going here. Normally I'm able to space this out, but let me just fix this real quick. I apologize for any technical difficulties, but we're not going to let that stop us learn some high school geometry here. Okay, so let's talk about the next thing here. Quadrilaterals, big word. And quadrilaterals are four-sided closed figures, okay, that are constructed with lines, things like this. So what type of quadrilaterals are we talking about? Well, quadrilaterals are a type of polygon. Okay, so we're talking about a four-sided polygon, and you're going to be studying things like the rectangle, all the properties of a rectangle. Trapezoid is another one. A rhombus, okay, and a square. All right, so these are you're going to be talking about all the different properties with respect to quadrilaterals and special quadrilaterals as well. Okay, so you're going to have a lot of fun in this particular chapter. Very, very important. And now let's move on. Ooh, boy, excuse me, right here. I'm going a little bit too far. Let's move on to similarity. Okay, again, my thing is not working, but I'm not going to stop this video and make this over again. I'm just going to keep plowing away. All right, so let's move on here. Similarity, okay? So what is similarity? Well, similarity is that one little squiggly figure right there. So let me just kind of show you that. So let's say I have a little triangle like this, okay? And let's just kind of really make sure you understand. Okay, so these two triangles together are exactly the same copy of one another. So these two triangles right here, this would be an example of congruency. That's what congruency is. It's an exact copy of one another. However, in this particular chapter, you're going to be dealing with similarity, and similarity is a different deal. And similarity is kind of a zoomed in or zoomed out copy of that figure, okay? So if you are given one figure and you zoom in, or if you're given one little figure and you zoom out, okay, vice versa, this is similarity, okay? So similar figures have the same angle measure, okay? And their respective sides are in proportion. All right, so you're going to find out in this particular chapter, you're going to be setting up a lot of ratios and proportions to solve problems. Okay, very, very important that you'll understand the difference between similarity and congruency. And again, ratios and proportions, things that you learned in algebra. Okay, you're going to have to bring all your algebra skills to geometry for sure. Okay, let's move on to our next thing here. Oh, look, it did it for me finally. I was able to space out. and that is transformations. Okay, so what am I talking about with transformations? Well, transformations are basically, let me just show you this real quick, things that we can do with a figure. So let's say I have a figure like this, okay, and I want to rotate it. Let's say I want to rotate it clockwise over here. That would be a transformation. Or maybe I have a box right there and I flip it across the x-axis. It would be right there. So transformations are things like rotations, okay. Let's see here. Reflections, all right? If I could reflect something across the x-axis, this point reflected, its mirror image would be over here. So if this is point A, this would be like A prime. And so we have rotations, reflections. We have these things called dilations, which are pretty cool. This is kind of when you zoom in and out. And then you have something called like glide reflections as well. Okay, so where you kind of take something, you move it up, and then you shift it over to the right. But that's the whole idea behind transformations. Okay, so again, you're going to have a whole chapter on that. And we got 3 chapters here. I probably went over 10 minutes, but hopefully you're still with me because you're interested in this stuff. Okay, all right, so let's move on. And now we have right triangles and basic trigonometry. Again, this is our third chapter that has to do with dedicated to triangles. Okay, so now we're talking about right triangles. Again, that's where one of the angles is 90 degrees, represented by this little notation right there. Excuse me, boy, I have technical difficulties and I'm having issues with my voice, but guess what? That's not going to stop me. All right, let's move on and talk about right triangles. So what are we talking about? What are some of the things we're going to be talking about in this chapter? We're going to be talking about like the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Definitely going to need to know how to deal with this for sure. You're also going to be talking about special right triangles. This is very important. So you're talking like 30, 60, 90 and 45, 45, 90 degree right triangles. Now, in this chapter as well, you're going to learn basic trigonometry. This is your stuff like sine, cosine, and tangent. Very, very important. So you really get an introduction to trigonometry in this chapter as well. Okay, so we're almost done, and maybe I should do these videos in advance, time it, but I just don't. I just kind of go. When I do videos, I make so many videos. I do the best estimation I can, but if I'm over 10 minutes, please forgive me. But let's move on with our last 2 chapters. So chapter 10 in my course is circles. Okay, so what are we talking about with circles? Well, obviously, we're going to be talking about things that you already know. Okay, so we have a circle. So you're going to learn about the area of a circle, the circumference of the circle, basic vocabulary about a circle. Like here's a diameter, there's the center, there's the radius. All that kind of good stuff. But you're actually going to be learning about different parts of a circle. Very, very important as well. So we're going to be learning about things called a chord. Okay, and what happens if we have 2 lines that go through a circle? What happens to these angles, and then what happens with these arcs in here? So there's a lot of different things you're going to need to know about inscribed angles. That would be something like this. Okay, so if I have an angle inscribed inside of a circle, so what's the angle measure here if I'm given this arc right there? So you learn a lot of different properties and theorems about circles in this particular chapter. This is not that difficult. Okay, again, you're going to be doing some algebra work in here, but not heavy-duty algebra. As long as you know how to solve basic algebra equations, you're going to be okay. But the whole thing here is just a lot of information. I don't think it's overly difficult. That's why you have to have super like awesome notes, very, very organized notes. There's just way too much information given for you to memorize all this stuff. Okay, but again, not difficult, just a lot of information. And finally, now let's go ahead and finish with this last chapter in my course, and that would be area and volume. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the area and volume of basic figures. So we're things like rectangles, squares, circles, triangles, trapezoids. Then we can kind of get into like pyramids, cylinders, okay, when we're talking about volume, spheres, and then things that when we look at a circle, we could be talking about the area of like a little pie section here. Okay, so that's a sector of a circle. Okay, and this is an arc and whatnot. So you really kind of get heavy duty into all, we're talking about area, surface area, volume of all these basic figures, and then also sectors of circles as well. And this is it. Probably went over 10 minutes. If that's the case, I'm sorry for not being 100% perfect. But, when you take a look at this, if you got a pretty good, like a basic sense of like, okay, I think I understand what he was saying, well, then you kind of have a pretty good feel, an overview of what you're going to encounter in high school level geometry. Okay, so the bottom line here is this: make sure you have done pretty well in algebra before you start looking at any geometry course. But hopefully this little video gave you a feel for what for what you're going to expect. So this is my course. Again, I'm going to leave a direct link to my geometry course in the description of this video. But if you're taking another geometry course, it's going to be pretty similar as well. So if this little video helped you out in some way, help me out by smashing that like button. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing. I've been on YouTube for 10 plus years, have over 1,000 plus math videos, basic math to advanced math like calculus and everything in between. So if you'd like my teaching style, please take advantage of my content, but my best math help will always be within my Math Help program. Okay, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.